Welcome. This is Jean Eaton of Information Managers. It is my honor and pleasure to be with you today at the Practice Management Nuggets. This is a weekly interview series with practice managers, healthcare providers, or trusted vendors who support healthcare practices. Our topics help primary care practice managers and owners to implement, maintain, or improve their businesses and practice administration so that the healthcare providers can focus on providing quality healthcare services. I am your host, Jean Eaton, the Practice Management Mentor with Information Managers. Today's guest is Diane Sherritt of Sherritt Services, Inc. and Sherritt Transcription Services. Today our topic is on your appointment scheduler, the key to your financial success. Diane has been ensuring professional success since 1997. Sherritt Services, Inc. and Sherritt Transcription Services are sister companies that formed to offer complete medical billing services and now a unique transcription service for medical, legal, and business professionals throughout Canada. Today, Diane is going to give us practical tips on how to achieve financial success with your appointment schedule, key personnel in your clinic that start the road to financial success, and how physicians can never again be overbooked, overwhelmed, while maximizing their income. Diane, it's great to have you here today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for asking to have me, Jean.
Well, this is going to be a great 30 minutes, and we're going to get through lots of good content in a very short period of time, so I'm going to keep us rolling along here. So, Diane, I met you and Kyle, your marketing director, several years ago when you were reviewing your business and preparing for expansion. We discussed your policies and procedures and helped you with your privacy impact assessment to make sure that you were meeting the obligations of an information manager under the Health Information Act and to provide quality services to your clients.
That's right, Jean.
Okay. And we've heard many of your clients tell me of your great services that SSI provides for billing and transcription services. So tell us, what is your story?
Well, my story began about 35 plus years ago when I first entered into the medical administrative industry as a clinic manager and clinical assistant. From there, I saw the growth and the need of different types of administrative tools necessary for a medical clinic to run efficiently. And so from there, I decided to form my company and to really focus on billing. And when I started to focus on billing, I recognized the appointment schedule as being the key instrument for financial success. It wasn't necessarily the billing, it was actually the appointment scheduler. So I spent time speaking to physicians about this and creating programs for them on the scheduler, meeting their obligations for finances, and they were very, very happy with it. And from there, we decided to go into transcription services. A big part of my career has been education as well. So we talked to a lot of our physicians regarding the transcription end of it, the billing and the appointment schedule, and how this all flows together. So that's basically my story in a nutshell.
That's a lot of information in a nutshell.
It is.
It is. So it surprises me to hear you say that the key to actually doing a good billing is the appointment scheduler.
Oh, absolutely. If we look at the appointment schedule in layman's terms, it's actually a general ledger. And so the key to all of this is having your ledger appropriately filled out, appropriate information for you to obviously do the correct transactions financially. No different in a clinic. When we have an appointment scheduler, it's not just about dumping a patient's name for every 10-minute or 15-minute slot. It is about creating that appointment based on the financial needs of how much the physician needs to make in a daily situation. We have a formula that we always give to our physicians on how much they actually need to make in a day, and then we try to double it for personal finances. That's why the appointment scheduler is such a key success of it. So for every slot is worth X amount of dollars to that physician based on how that physician practices. And every physician practices differently. So this is where our education element comes in Sherritt Services, is where we sit down, speak to the physician about how they practice, what their management is like, what their needs are financially, and that's how we create that scheduler to meet the financial needs for every minute of the day that he works or she works.
Okay, that's a really interesting approach. Get that background information to plan the scheduler. So it's not necessarily that
Sorry,
a physician
Jean.
wants to have an appointment every 5 minutes, there are other things that need to be considered first.
Yes, and the thing, and I know one of the things that physicians really struggle with is looking at their patients as a dollar sign. And so, you know, I'm putting that quite bluntly, but that is the truth. That's a lot of them are taken aback by how we approach it sometimes. So we've had to learn over the years when we create this appointment scheduler to look like a ledger for the physicians. We explain to the physicians that even though, you know, this is about their patients and their care of it, they also have to maximize what their income is in order for them to continue doing their practice successfully to look after their patients. So we do take a gentler approach in explaining why we do what we do. And once that approach is accepted by the physician, we can then really focus on just talking about the monies and how slots become monies, and for every slot, how much that money could accumulate for them, again, based on their practice, whether they're doing procedures, whether they're doing visits, whether they're psych visits, all kinds of visits that they can be doing within the clinic parameters and obviously within the parameters of the governing rules of the provinces that pay the physicians.
So tell us some more about that. Can you create a scenario about a sample physician and what types of things you might need to consider?
Sure. For basically, we say to our physicians, how do you practice on a day-to-day basis? It isn't how do you practice in general. We need to know what do you do in a given day, because physicians tend to do things differently on certain times. Sometimes they'll do full physicals twice a day, 3 times a day. Sometimes they'll do them in the morning. Sometimes they'll do them in the afternoon. Sometimes they'll have prenatal days. So maybe a Wednesday will be the days that they see all their prenatals. They may have excisional clinics where all they do then is excisional biopsies, punch biopsies, any kinds of types of procedures that they may want to do, wart treatments, stuff like that. So we need to find from them on a day-to-day basis what is it that they like to do, what is it that they want to do, and how we can create that day to maximize their income for them. Depending upon, sometimes they'll only do half days, sometimes they'll do full days, and what does that full day inquire? Sometimes they'll do evenings, and so we'll have to look at the evening end of it and how we're going to do all of that. So it all comes down to what types of patients they like to see, what type of visits they like to do, and then what we do is we figure out how much each of those visits amount to based on the provincial guidelines and how much they're going to pay for that. That's basically how we create their scheduler.
Okay. So if you are counting up the type of patients that a doctor would like to see in a day, then you multiply that by the billing value for that type of patient, and then divide it out by the number of hours in that day, and that comes up to your appointment slot?
Basically, well, what we ask them to do, it's not even about the slots, because I guess for myself, doing this for so long, I kind of take out all the times. I just look at it, the day as a blank canvas. And so what it becomes to me then is, instead of how much time it takes the physician to do this, it's how many procedures and visits do they want to do to accumulate it. So basically the formula is this. You're going to take how many days that a physician actually works in a month. He's going to have to, that physician needs to know how much that they have to output in a month. What are their expenses, their total expenses? So say their total expenses every month is $10,000. So we know we need to achieve $10,000 a month minimum. So we're going to take that $10,000, we're going to divide it into how many days that they actually work in a month, and then we're going to divide it into how many days a week they work. So whatever that figure comes out to, we need to know that that's how much they need to make. So basically, if my physician needs to make $1,000 a day to open his clinic or her clinic, we then need to create $1,000 worth of monies on appointments. And for us in Alberta, what we're doing is we double it. So we say if our physicians want to make $1,000, we actually want to try to make our physicians $2,000. Because what we want to do is we want the clinic, which is the most important part of a physician's practice, to actually finance that entire business that he's doing, which is his medical practice. We don't want the hospital, long-term care, home visits, or that to actually factor into this at all. We look at that as icing on the cake. So we try then every day to make this physician $2,000 based on the types of appointments and the worth of those appointments on a daily basis.
Okay. So that's a really valuable way to do that formula. So who are the people that the clinic needs to rely on to ensure that the appointment scheduler is best utilized to meet this formula?
That would be the people who answer the telephone. I know when I speak to clinic managers, they sometimes are kind of surprised that I do say that. But the people who look after the phone calls, the people who put those phone calls for appointments on that scheduler to create that financial success for that physician, to me and in my world, are the most important and influential people of that clinic. And those are the people that need to be educated the most, that need to be told their worth. They need to be educated as to why their job is so important to that clinic. I really believe in being very transparent of reasons why there's worth in the jobs they do within clinics, because then there's a value attached to that person. Because a lot of times people who answer the phones really think that they're just there to answer the phone and they're just purely quote-unquote reception. Well, yes, they are reception, but they are the key to financial success. So once we get our physicians and their schedule down in agreement to how they want their days to go, we then sit down and we educate the prime people who answer the phones and create the scheduler. And we discuss with them what the needs are. We discuss with them why they need to create a scheduler this way. And some of the software that we work on, there are different vendors that can and cannot do this. But the vendors that are quite technical, they can literally take a scheduler and identify every slot for us. So it makes it a lot easier for that key person to actually book those appointments because they know exactly where to put the types of appointment necessary for that particular doctor. So as you can see, Jean, this would take a little more time than just answering the phone and saying, yes, Jane Smith, you can come in at 9. Yes, Andy Smith, you can come in at 9:10, so on and so forth. This is about the person who is telephone triaging on the phone, saying what is it that you need, why do you need to see the physician, and then putting that person into the correct slot for that doctor based on all the information that we've done in the background to create this. And they're the ones that really go for it. They're the ones that create it. They're the ones that take it forward. They're the ones that take accountability and responsibility for it. And the clinics that we work with that actually do this, the people are very happy in doing what they're doing.
Well, that's great. And you're right. I think we need to make sure that we value and the employees that are the gatekeepers for the organization, make sure that we provide them with the opportunity to be that good PR person. Yep. But they also have a really important need for the business side of things to make sure that the business works and is effective and efficient and financially viable.
Yeah. Well, they take ownership. They actually take ownership of what they're doing. You know, their job is the key. Like, it is the key, and I say this over and over again, and we should be very grateful that we have people in place that are able to take ownership to the particular job that they have to do and the training that goes behind it. Because, as I said, the clinics that we work with, our clients that we work with, because all our clients that we do billing for, we offer this service to them. And we don't charge for any of this service because, you know, it really helps our physicians get to where they need to be, which is something that's very, very important to us. And so, yes, it does take time. Yes, it does take training and that. But at the end of all of this, there is just so much success throughout the entire clinic, and the end result is a good financial scheduler. Okay.
So where do we go from here? We've spoken with the doctor. We've determined what their financial needs are. Mm-hmm. You've talked with the staff. They understand the importance of their role. What comes next?
What comes next then is the doctor has to own up to everything that we've done, and changing habits, and that is the biggest challenge. Because we all know that physicians, you know, when they get patients in the room, there's always that situation where, oh, can you see my little son? Can you see my little daughter? And the doctor has to be able to say, yes, I will, but I can't at this moment because I have all of these other patients that are waiting for me who have booked my time. And so there has to be the physician backing up his staff, who is saying to the people, to the patients, that I'm sorry the doctor can't see you today because, he's too busy and so on. And this is what happens what happens is that if the physicians don't back their staff up after we've done all of this, after we've gone on through this, and they go back to the bad habits of just letting people come in whenever, the backlog of patients in a day becomes a point where, again, the doctor gets behind, where patients get impatient because they have to wait. And so, and this has gone through time. How many times do we go to the offices and we wait? And it's because when people are sick, there is no time limit on what's spent, on how long a person is sick. So again, the benefit of having a really good scheduler is factoring those in, factoring in what the patients are like based on the practice. That way, the physician doesn't have to work as hard by seeing and being stressed out, seeing numbers and numbers and numbers of patients. What they do is they have a very, very tailored appointment scheduler where they can run on time, where they don't need to be stressed about running behind time, and their patients aren't stressed about waiting. So the whole key to this now, after we've done this, is getting our doctors on track, creating a different habit, a different form of thinking to support the staff, because they've implemented what we've asked them to. Now they have to back them up.
So it sounds like we've invested the time to tailor the appointment schedule for the practice to make it effective and efficient, and now we need to make sure that everybody's walking the talk.
This is the implementation stage. And if the physicians tend not to go with the implementation, then it's a total failure. That's the reality of it. We work hard to show the physician why we're doing this, and they do have to buy into doing this, because they do have to change. They have to change the way they think. The physicians that do this, that we know who are our clients, they see the difference. They see the difference because, A, they get home a little earlier, they spend more time in private life, and their practice is just so successful, not only because of the finances, but because the staff is happier, because they don't have to deal with angry patients for waiting. Patients are happier because they know exactly what's happening in the clinic, because they're being informed. There's certain slots they can go into, time frame they can be, and everybody wins. It is a win-win situation, and I've seen it happen, and it's really awesome when you see it flow very well.
I'm sure that it is awesome. When you can finish your workday and know that you've made a difference and they didn't have too many bumps and things went smoothly, boy, that makes a wonderful day.
Well, and a part of this is based on my own experience. When I used to work in ENT, my doctor would run an hour behind. And I would get those stares from the patients, that are just angry because they have to be there an extra hour, and they're sick and they're stressed. And I see then my physician being stressed because he's running behind. And, and he wasn't making any extra money being there till 7 o'clock at night. So because I've experienced all of this myself, this is why this was so important for me then to put out to all my physician clients who is with Share It Services, of the importance of this. And we continue to check back in with the ones that do it. And all these, you always have to alter because things change, times change, doctors' educations change as well. So you have to stay up with the times. But that's the key reason why I did all of this. Been there, done that, walked it.
Great. And I'm sure that there's an opportunity and a need to do some fine-tuning. We can set out some metrics or think the path that we're going to go through. Then we have to actually do it, and then we have to go back and take a look at it and say, okay, so what did our plan look like, and how did we actually achieve it, and where do we have to make some adjustments?
Yeah, exactly, for sure.
Okay.
For sure.
Can you give us a scenario of perhaps a fairly typical clinic where you were asked to help them with the billing and your process about going through their appointment schedule? What did they learn from that process? What were the aha moments?
The aha moments is and it's funny that you asked, because I was just thinking about this. One of the typical things that we do is when we speak to our physicians about what we term complete medicals or full physicals. typically a physician needs to spend time doing this. And so we often say, well, how often do you do one in a day? And a physician say, oh, I'll only do maybe 1 or 2 a day because it's just so much time, it's time consuming and so on. And so we say, okay, we understand that. So how about if we put 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon? Yeah, but, we don't want to put, but, the physician would say to me, well, don't put it first thing in the morning and don't put it first thing in the afternoon because I don't want to start that way. So I'll say, well, listen, how about if we do, but let me tell you why we would do that. Because your patient has to dress and undress. And the physician looks at us and goes, well, yes. And I said, so sometimes, it takes a little while for that patient to undress. They may be elderly. They may have a problem. They may, so on and so forth. So why don't we say then if we book your full physical in for 9 o'clock and we book it for half an hour to 9:30, why don't, and because your patient has to dress and undress, why don't we start your day and start your afternoon by putting in a real quick appointment at the same time called double booking? And our physician would say, well, no, then you're going to put me so far behind. And I said, no, just hear me out. This is all part of the education. So you have your full physical booked at 9 to 9:30, but why don't we just put in a quick prescription renewal at 9, and why don't we put in a very quick prescription renewal at 9:30? When your patient is dressing and undressing, you're going to see a very quick prescription renewal. And so the physician says, well, what happens if, they always say something else? And I said, well, again, this is key to your staff at the front. When they book the appointment, they will know that a quick appointment is only for a prescription renewal. And we're not talking about blood pressure or cardiac meds or something that is very systemic. What we're talking about is maybe contraceptive, maybe a wart, something that doesn't need to go into detail, because we all know that when we're doing systemic refills, those will change and do take some more time. So we're talking about a very basic prescription renewal. And so what the lady at the front does when she answers the phone, she says to Jane Smith, you need a prescription renewal for birth control. We'll put you in at 9, but we need to let you know that is all the physician will have time to see you for. If you would like another appointment to discuss that, why don't we do that tomorrow while we put your prescription repeat in for today? So because that prescription repeat is a short appointment, very, very quick and to the point, the patient already knows that's all they're in there for. So they go in there, the doctor spends all 2 minutes to do that or 5 minutes to do that. Not only then can he bill for his full physical, he can bill 2 other visits in the same time frame, thusly creating more income.
So a couple of things here. We need some technology to help us make sure that we're labeling the appointments correctly so that we put them in the right slots. And then we need some education so that the person that's answering the phone knows how to interact with the patient and set them up for success.
Yes, the tool is very important, Jean. The tool that the physicians use to create their scheduler is very, very important. And so we've worked on several software, and we deal with very many vendors. And, some are better than others, that's obvious. And so it is really up to the physician to look at his practice as a business, and whatever tool he or she is using in that practice to do the appointment scheduling, the billing, and the EMR, they really need to look at it as that versus, how much is this going to cost me to have? Because if you create a scheduler that's viable and a billing person to do that billing for you from the scheduler, it really is irrelevant at the costs of those, because you're making the finances that you should be making because the tool that you're using allows you to do what it needs to do to make you successful. So there's a huge partnership there that I see between the tool of the clinic and the physicians and the staff.
So we need to make sure that we're using the right tool. The education for, of course, the physician and the staff that are answering the phones and scheduling the appointments. What types of tips do you have about providing the education to those front office people about knowing or understanding how important those appointment labels are and the interactions with the patients to explain this is for refill appointment and only refills?
It comes down to the personality of the person that you're educating. And that's the reality. You have to have somebody who is willing and wanting to learn and to understand why we're doing what we're doing. It takes, a really special person to do that because it's a huge job. And so I always say when people ask me who is the best person to do this and how do you do this, it's somebody who wants to learn, who understands it, who's very lineal in their thinking, and not generalize what we're doing here. They really take the detail and own that detail of the education so they can apply it to their job, to apply it to the scheduler, so then, it just flows throughout the clinic after that.
Okay.
It really is the key to the person's personality.
If that person is able to dedicate their attention to making those appointments, it's going to make it a whole lot easier.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Really, they are the start. They're really the start line. And we need to see that more and more of recognizing that, and lots of times, unfortunately, we hire and again, been there, done that. You hire people and you think, oh, they're going to do a tremendous job up there, and then when you go ahead and do that, you find that the personality is not the person; it's the personality of the person. It just doesn't suit that particular job. Like I said, it takes a person very lineal in their thinking to be able to adapt and take this under control and to own what they're doing, because it's so important.
It absolutely is important. We've got a question in our chat from Vanessa, and she is asking, is there anything that you would do differently for a walk-in practice as opposed to a different type of practice where all the appointments are pre-booked?
Yes, so walk-in, we actually work with walk-ins. Again, walk-ins are difficult. They're not as easy as they seem, because actually a regular clinic is pretty easy to make something a walk-in is whatever comes to the door. I think you have to recognize that walk-in appointments are not 5-minute appointments. That's number one. Walk-ins are never 5-minute appointments. Number two, walk-ins are triage, because I used to work a walk-in in the Lower Mainland, and you never knew what walked through that door. And you can have heart attacks, you can have people in labor, you can have children very ill, you can have broken bones, you can have lacerations. So the key to the financial success of that appointment scheduler is not booking 5-minute intervals and not thinking they're 5-minute intervals. The other key to that is having a scheduler where you can also separate visits from procedures. I think that's very key. And that way the physician knows where things are going and where he's at, so that it's not, again, one after the other after the other. In the scheduler, if you look at it, you have visits to one side and procedure to the other side. And again, it has to be managed well at the person up front to be able to, it's a traffic thing at that point in time. It's directing traffic and getting the physician to know where he's at. And then again, if somebody's having lacerations done, they also have to get their local anesthetic. So while they're being frozen and waiting for that freezing to go, you can direct the physician into the next room to do, again, an ear or a cough or something that they can look at. So it's important that the traffic is directed well. Many challenges to a walk-in.
Mm-hmm. Is there any advantage when you're having a walk-in practice to try and leave open slots so that you have some reserved slots throughout your day that you don't book in advance and you only book on the day of?
No, for me, my philosophy for walk-in is you leave the whole thing wide open. It's a very fine line when you're having a walk-in clinic, because if it crosses over to starting being a family practice clinic, you run into a huge situation where patients are going to wait. And that's typically not a walk-in is for. A walk-in is to really take a lot of relief off emergency departments. That's been our philosophy, for the easier things so that patients don't have to wait. Children don't have to wait so long. And again, the golden rule at walk-ins is that kids should always come first, because they are sick and, they're crying and they can be loud, and it upsets the entire apple cart in the waiting room, so kids should come in. So again, the scheduler should, when the person directing the traffic on the scheduler sees this, they should be directing those kids first. Lots of knowledge at the front needs to come forth, I guess, is what I'm trying to say here in a walk-in.
Mm-hmm. And being able to share that information so there's some clear line of communication from the physician and all the support staff.
It comes down to expectations. What does that physician in that walk-in expect? Does the physician expect that person to be able to be a traffic manager, or does the physician just expect that person to just bring patients in at a time? it's the expectations of what you want that practice to look like as a walk-in. And that's the key here. And then hiring the right personnel to be able to address that philosophy and actually carry it out.
I have lots more questions, but I want to check to make sure if we have any other questions from our audience. What we're going to do is, because we're almost out of time here, Diane, if there was a number one tip that you want to leave with folks, if they don't remember anything else, what's the most important thing you would like to share with us?
Speak to your doctor and ask him how she wants to practice on an everyday basis. What does she want to see? What does he want to see? What is it that he wants to do?
Well, that sounds like a great way for us to wrap up our privacy nugget for today. On your screen, you will see the contact information for Diane. So if we haven't got to your questions, you can send me an email. You can send Diane an email. And if you would like to contact Diane to find out how Sherritt Services can assist you with learning your key to your financial success in your organization, then you can contact Diane at sherrittservices.ca. Thank you very much, Diane. This has been a wealth of information. I really appreciate your time with us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Jean.
Okay. This is Jean Eaton with Information Managers, your practice management mentor. Thanking you for joining us today, and I look forward to having you join us for our upcoming events. Stay tuned.